Welcome to the DreamViews podcast, one of the many lucid dreaming resources we have at DreamViews.com. I'm Spellby2, and you may remember on the last episode, I was the one who said it won't be a year until our next podcast episode. And here we are, about 1.5 years later, and we've finally got another episode. I want to sincerely apologize for that. It has been an absolute roller coaster in the past year and a half. At least for me personally, the last episode we recorded, I was in my last semester of college. So since then, I've graduated. I've got a full-time job. I'm living at home right now, but I'm saving up for moving out, getting my own house. But just in that span of time, it's been absolute craziness. And I know for Lisa, or Ophelia Blue as she's known on the forum, it's been even crazier with her personal life. So that's one of the reasons why right now I'm kind of riding this one solo. Just wanted to get some kind of episode out for you guys because a lot of you guys have requested a new podcast episode. So this is going to be a little bit of a Q&A mini-sode just to whet your appetite and hopefully be a sign of things to come. Again, once I move out, I should have more time and resources available. But I don't want to make any promises. That got me in trouble last time. So without further ado, you guys have waited long enough. Let's go and get started. Our first question comes from Steph L. She asked this in 2014, so she may have forgotten it, but we're going to answer it anyway. Steph L asks, I would love to hear about persistent dream realms and dream guides, the non-metaphysical kind. And this is a really cool topic that I'm really interested in. Although it is one of those topics that if you tell it to people who don't know anything about lucid dreaming, they'll probably think you're crazy. And even if you tell it to people who do know about lucid dreaming, they'll probably think you're crazy as well. But yeah, persistent realms and dream guides. I'll start with persistent realms. So I will say I don't have a ton of experience with this personally. It's been at the top of my lucid to-do list for several months now. Having a full-time job kind of cuts back in your lucid time, but whatever. But I will say I've researched this extensively, and most of the stuff I'll be talking about comes from Hugh's Dream Journal. Hugh is one of the members on our forum who has a ton of experience with dream guides, persistent realms, and I find myself linking beginners to him like all the time because it's just amazing inspiration as to what is really possible with lucid dreaming. So I'll link to that in the description. And also I probably should say, speaking of things I'll link to in the description, we really want your questions. Like I said, this question was from 3 years ago. So if you have anything you want us to talk about in a future episode, we have a thread on the forum. Feel free to post in it. We could go on talking about the same stuff, the same techniques all the time, which is all well and good, but we'd love to talk about what you guys want us to talk about. And so feel free to ask us questions, give us topics of discussion. We'd love to do that. But back to the matter at hand. Persistent realms. Again, it's something that's been at the top of my to-do list for a while. And what a persistent realm is it's a dream realm or a place you go when you dream that has sort of realistic characteristics in the fact that it is persistent. So whenever you go back, you kind of resume where you left off. Maybe a couple of things like minor changes, but it's generally the same geography, the same characters, the same kind of theme from time to time you go back. Another characteristic is that it has, and these are all from Hugh's guide, these 4 characteristics. Number 2 is it has consequences. So something you do in a previous dream will have effects on what happens in the future or in more recent persistent realm dreams. So I guess that puts a lot more emphasis on not going crazy and going crazy with your dream control, which can seem kind of limiting, but I'll get into that. A third characteristic is that it has laws that govern it. So kind of just like the laws of physics. Often you can't break them, but you can use them to your advantage. So say, for example, you have a dream realm where magic exists and everyone can use it. Often that'll help out with, like if you're struggling to do normal dream control, you're like, oh, well, now I'm in this realm where magic exists. I can perform magic easily because it's the normal. It's just how things work here. So you can have, and there's many variations that you can have ones where, you know, a lot of it you can be inspired by media. Like I like to think of Guardians of the Galaxy, mainly because I just watched the second one. But kind of a futuristic place where space travel is real. You have like a ton of different planets you can travel to. I already mentioned magic as an example. So like you have sorcerers who fight in epic battles. And you might have actually just read something about this on the forum. Someone who had a dream realm where like animal transformations were fairly normal. Like anyone could transform into an animal. They had kind of, I guess, a spirit animal, for lack of a better term. So there's a bunch of variations on those laws, and they're not meant to really limit you, but they're just inherent of the fact that, I guess it's the fourth characteristic, that they're real. They have an extra realism to them that a normal lucid dream or normal dream realm doesn't really have. Like you might have, your characters are more intelligent. Like you don't have those derpy dream characters that just say random things and don't make any sense. You actually have ones with their own personal opinions, personal agendas, and actions that work to further those agendas. So I guess the key to, you may ask, well, how do I go about creating a persistent realm? That sounds all well and good. The key is, as with anything in lucid dreaming, is to believe. I know it sounds incredibly cheesy, but I'll say it anyway. It's you just have to believe that it is a real place, that it is somewhere you can go. Obviously, don't believe it's too real, or else when you're there, you'll be like, oh, I'm not dreaming anymore. But kind of think of it as a place you can go, a place that exists. I like to use not really an analogy, just an example. Star Wars. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, so I'm going to sound really stupid if I try listing off names. But just in general, Star Wars, you've seen, TV shows, movies, video games, where they all kind of have a certain theme, where there's a force that governs all. Again, my lack of Star Wars knowledge is showing. But whatever. So you might have different movies or games, but they all kind of follow the same theme. They might be around the same time. And it's kind of the same way with dream realms. So you might think, oh, I want to have a Star Wars themed dream tonight. So I'm going to go to the Star Wars realm. I'm going to go to a place where the laws of the universe of Star Wars are in effect, where there's the Force, there's Jedis, there's stuff. There's a bad guy dressed in black. The possibilities are really endless, but that's one way to kind of think about it. That makes it a little bit easier, is that you kind of already have that concept of places that aren't real per se. Like, I hate to break to you guys, but Star Wars isn't real. I know, spoiler alert, but you have that kind of gives you the concept of things that aren't real per se, but they do have those laws, and you can kind of experience that. So again, just kind of believing that it is real, kind of thinking about it a lot is really good. And that's a good way to keep up your motivation to want to go to that place, is to imagine like, okay, well, in this dream realm, I can use the Force, I can throw on lightsabers, I can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So anyway, that's all I really have to say about that. And then the other thing Steffel asked about was dream guides. And this one I do have more experience with, because I do have a dream guide of my own. But what is a dream guide, you may ask? A dream guide, the definition kind of varies depending on your beliefs. There's a lot of people that think dream guides are more of spirit guides, where they're kind of astral beings that come to teach you about the world and how the universe works. I mean, I'm not going to debunk that. I'm not going to prove it. I'm just throwing that out there. Some people believe that. At least from my experience, which is what I'm going to talk about, dream guides are persistent characters. They're typically more intelligent than normal dream characters. And I say they're persistent in the fact that they often have the same personality, first of all, the same appearance. That's the main thing, is that they look the same, they kind of act the same from dream to dream. And now I kind of want to make the statement that it is different from there are normal, just persistent dream characters that kind of have those same abilities where they're persistent from dream to dream. They have the same personality, appearance, and they might even be more intelligent than a regular one. But what sets a dream guide apart is that often, as opposed to just a normal dream character, they have more of a teaching role. So like, at least with mine, my dream guide, her name is Vi, spelled V-I. I don't know if it's short for anything. I haven't seen her in a long time, so, but that's my own fault, but whatever. She has more of like a teaching role. So whenever she's there, she usually teaches me some kind of dream control thing, or maybe just something about something I need to hear in real life. And so that kind of sets her apart from a normal dream character, in that, she seems to have that knowledge of stuff outside of just the dream, and the dream realm. Now, whether that's kind of a paranormal, supernatural kind of knowledge, again, I'm not going to get into that. But so a lot of people wonder, well, how do you get around to creating a dream guide? And I will stop myself right there, because creating is not really the right term, I would say. You can create persistent dream characters. You can like come up with, you can kind of create a story around them, like, okay, this is in my mind, this is a persistent dream character. And I tried that at first for a long time. If you go way back in my dream journal, I'm not super proud of it, but I had a guy who I tried calling my dream guide, who was, I think his name was Bartholomew, called him Bart. But I had like thought about it for a long time. I was like, okay, this is Bart's abilities, this is his personality, this is everything about him, and I tried to get that to pervade into my dream. But Bart wasn't really a dream guide per se. He was more of just someone I created. Whereas a dream guide is just kind of appears. It's really, really hard to describe. But I know, at least for my search for Vi, there's a ton of dream journal entries I have about it. But I basically searched for her. It was a journey until I finally found her, and then I didn't even know really what to do at that point. But so, and it does kind of vary based on the personality of your dream guide. Now, sometimes, because it's more of a projection of your subconscious, it does vary. At least the personality of the dream guide varies based on your personality. But at least how you go about finding them says a lot about what their personality will be or is. Yeah. So, for example, the fact that I went and sought out, almost like a student would try and seek out like a teacher or a sensei, it says a lot about the fact that she does teach me new things, teaches me things more than I would typically know. Whereas some people say that like they just had a lucid dream and this guy shows up and it's like, hey, I'm your dream guide. I guess in those cases, again, I don't have a lot of experience with that because Vi is completely different. But the dream guide is typically more of a like active, in that it could just be a different teaching style for one, but they're more active in seeking you out and more active in helping you than a typical dream character would be. But yeah, I don't know. Again, it's really one of those things that sounds crazy when you talk about it, but it's really interesting to experience. And I'd say if you haven't tried it, try it. What's the worst that could happen? I think it's really cool. Again, it's at the top of my to-do list. So now that we're 15 minutes in, I'll go and move to the next. Next question is from Jacob46719. I hope that's not an address or a PIN number of some kind, but whatever. So Jacob asks, what is your favorite moment when shapeshifting? Is it the transformation process, a certain body part that you find to feel awesome, the end product, etc.? And he also asks, can you share some general tips? I'm going to assume he's talking about just general transformation tips. So transformation is definitely one of those things that's really hard for beginners to grasp, just because there's absolutely nothing like it in real life. And unless someone knows something I don't, there's no possible way in real life to transform at will into a different creature or different, like anything. So there's a lot of a lot of people struggle with, okay, how do I even get started doing this? And I kind of myself fell into the trap a lot of just trying to brute force it. Be like, okay, well, I'm transforming. Like, say I wanted to transform into a dog. I'd be like, okay, I am a dog. I am a dog. I'm a dog. And kind of trying to drill that into my head and then just expecting myself to become a dog. And a lot of times it didn't really work that way. At least when I was first starting out, it wasn't. It was a lot more complicated than that. Because there's, unlike a lot of other dream control, there's a lot more feeling involved in it. So like, say you're using telekinesis. Well, okay, just you move stuff around. There's not a whole lot of feeling attached to it. Whereas with transformation, like if you're growing a new body part, you want to feel that body part become an extension of you. And so that's where a lot of people struggle with. But my advice is something that I found was really helpful. I guess I have 3 points. The thing that I started with that I found really effective from the beginning is using, potions or magic spells or anything magic. Because your brain kind of, at least my brain, I like to overanalyze why things happen in real life and in dreams, which often causes me trouble in both. So we often know that, again, like we've seen in TV shows, magic just kind of happens. Like you can drink a potion and become invisible or fly. I've done that in a dream where I've drank a potion and started flying. And so I'd recommend that not only for transformation, but just about any dream control. If you're having trouble with it, just drink. Drink your problems away. That's a terrible life lesson, but at least in dreams. Just, yeah, like that's a good place to start, is just kind of get away from that schema that it's not possible, and without overanalyzing it to the point that you can't do it. So after you do that for a while and you want to just kind of get better at it, the second point I have is to start small. I forget, it was some thread on the forum I read a while back about transformation. But you want to start with maybe just growing a couple fingers. So just like grow an extra finger on your hand and kind of like bend it and feel how it's just an extension of the rest of your hand. And then once you kind of get the feeling of, okay, now it feels more realistic, then you can start getting bigger, maybe grow an arm or start growing wings. Just normal, like just extra things, as opposed to doing a full transformation. That's kind of more advanced. But, just start out just feeling how realistic it feels. You want to get that sensation and then start scaling up. And then the final point I have is, actually works really well for, again, any dream control, is the good old adage, fake it till you make it. I'll give the example of one time when I was trying to transform. I think it was the task of the month. It might have been something else I was trying to do. But I had to transform into a cat. And so I got Lucid at one point. I tried it. And so I like imagined myself turning into a cat. I kind of got down on the ground on all fours and imagined myself shrinking and turning into a cat. And it worked for about a second, and then all of a sudden it like popped, and I was back just normal person crouching on the ground looking like an idiot. And so I tried again. It kind of didn't really work again. So I'm just like, okay, well, I'll just pretend it worked. So I got on the ground, imagined myself shrunk. It's like, okay, I'm a cat. And like to kind of affirm it in my mind, I started like licking my paw. And as I did that, it started to like actually notice with each lick, I started like having more hair on my arm. And the next thing I know, it's just like, it snaps and I'm there, I'm a cat. And I'm like a full like black cat. I have control of my tail and everything. And it was really, really awesome. I think it's one of the few times I've fully transformed like that. But that's the key, is just pretend that it worked. Because a lot of lucid dreaming is emotions as opposed to looks. Like things can look one way, but it's more governed by how you feel. So if you feel that like, okay, I did it, I'm now a cat, or whatever, insert whatever you're trying to transform into, the dream will often like catch back up. And you're like, okay, well, he actually is a cat. Let's make him a cat. Anyway, but that's my just general tips on transformation. You also asked what my favorite moment is. I guess my second favorite moment is just the wide variety of transformation types. Like I think one time I drank a potion, and like it sent me to like a seizing fit, and I like blacked out, and then I came to, and I just had the wings, and I was like, oh, cool, that worked really well. But other times it's just like you feel it growing out. Like one time I grew wings and I felt it like growing out of my shoulder blades. And other times it's just like it just snaps and it's there. So it's just it's kind of like how there's a wide variety of wild transitions, wake-induced lucid dream transitions. That just like that, there's a ton of different ways to transition into being transformed, and that just the wide variety of that is kind of cool. Although I guess my favorite point would be the moment where I like to call it the click, or the snap, where you kind of officially snap into whatever you transformed into, and it just starts to feel more realistic. You start to kind of feel the ability to control whatever you transformed into. Like, for example, when I grew wings, I could feel like them out of my shoulder blades. I could feel the ability to flap them. I could feel when I was flying with them, I could feel the wind going through the feathers, and it was really cool. So just that moment where like you feel, one, you feel accomplished that you did it, and two, you feel whatever power that your new transformation endows you. I think that's the word. But yeah, so I'd say that's my favorite moment. All right, so we come to our last question. This is from Pat Junfa. This is actually fairly recent, actually. He says, one thing I'd love to hear your thoughts on is how universal you think lucid dreaming is. I think everyone can probably learn to lucid dream with effort, yet people seem to have widely different natural talents for it. I've heard some comparisons to sports and music, that some people can seem to progress with relatively little effort, and some may never become as proficient. But with effort, they get somewhere with it. I'd be curious to hear your observations from the forum as to the progression you see. It might help to inspire to hear about the development of such proficiency. So, yeah, I mean, you took some of the words right out of my mouth, the comparison to sports and everything. This is a question that a lot of new people ask. Like, they might try for a couple months and see no progress and be like, you know what, I can't lucid dream, it's not for me, I'm stupid or whatever. And trust me, if you struggle with it, you're not stupid, you're normal. Like, it's really, first of all, it's a big thing you're trying to accomplish. You're rewiring your brain, essentially, to kind of second guess that not everything is real. Maybe I am in a dream right now. And it's a lot more complicated than you think. But I still stand by the belief that anyone can lucid dream. And I say that because the only real let's try to say words here. The real prerequisite for being able to lucid dream is that you have dreams. And even if you don't think you have dreams, you have dreams. You just don't remember them. Unless you have like a traumatic frontal lobe injury in your brain that like physically prevents you from having dreams, you have dreams. And that's the first step, is just to get to remember them. But that's another point. But yeah, like Pat Junfa said, it's very similar to sports. Some people pick it up really quickly. Like, I've seen people on the forum who, like, their first or second day trying it, they already had a lucid dream. And then others just don't kind of struggle with it. Like, I was that example. It took me 6 months for my first lucid dream. But I'll get into that. So they're really a bunch of different variables. It's not really cut and dry as to why some people are good at it, why some people are bad at it. Because I'll kind of bring the analogy back to sports. My older brother was incredibly athletic. When he was in high school, he was a 3-sport athlete. He did baseball, basketball, and football. And like, he had that ability and like love for sports from a very early age. Me, on the other hand, I am terrible at sports. I'm not athletic. I never really got into it. And my parents tried. Like, when I was a kid, we both did the same kind of little league stuff when we were little. But I was never good at it. I couldn't really understand the point of it. I was just like, it's just kind of whatever. I'd rather just stay inside and read, or like do nerdy stuff, I guess. I don't know. But it's the opposite way for the two of us when it comes to like mental stuff. Like, I learn things really quickly. I graduated with a bachelor's in computer engineering, which is one of the harder majors, I think. Don't quote me on that. But whereas my brother, like, yeah, he's kind of smart, but he doesn't pick up things as quickly as I do. So it really depends a lot on one personality, to just kind of like the history of like what experience you have with it. So I guess tying that back into lucid dreaming, just some of the variables that affect how well you or how easily you pick up lucid dreaming. First would be age. It is fairly common. It's a lot easier for kids to pick up lucid dreaming as opposed to adults. There's many reasons for that. Mostly just because your brain is still developing, it's more malleable, and so you can kind of learn new things. That's why kids, you might have a 5-year-old that knows 3 different languages, and then you have me who struggles to make broken Spanish sentences after 2 years of studying. Is no me gusta. But yeah, so a lot of people, and that's the way a lot of people in the forum are. They start at a very early age, usually because of like a defense to nightmares. They would learn that, oh, okay, if something's scary, this is a dream, I can either wake up from it, or this is a dream, nothing could hurt me, I'll be fine. So age plays a lot into it. Not to say that people who are older in age can't do that. It's just that it's typically easier for younger people. The second variable is just your personality, just kind of the way your brain works. Like, do you overanalyze things like I do? Are you more just go with the flow, and you can kind of just adapt better than most? Just stuff like that. And it's not to say like, oh, if you can, again, like I said, if you can't lucid dream, then you're stupid. It's nothing like that. It's just the way your brain works. Just works differently than what you need for lucid dreaming. And some people have the brain types that make it a little bit easier than others, and they're typically lucky, but whatever. And finally, I guess, is just your history of like dreaming in general, lucid dreaming. Like I said, the people who had nightmares when they were kids and learned it from an early age. But I also mean it in the way like it boils down to schemas, really. I like to use the analogy of me and golf. I was on the golf team in junior high, first 2 years of high school, and I was absolutely terrible. I think my best score on 9 holes was a 57 out of par 36, so you can do the math. That's pretty bad. But like I practiced, like we practiced every day. I had a coach that was like helping me. We had like professionals that were like analyzing my swing and everything. But I never really saw myself get any better. And I just would get frustrated, like I can't do this, like I'm not getting any better, and so that's why I quit after 10th grade. Then a couple years later, I think it was like freshman year of college, me and my dad started golfing because I think he wanted to learn it just as a way for us, the two of us, to just hang out. And so I picked up a golf clubs for the first time in about 2 years, and I found that not only had I not, like I hadn't lost what I did know, but I've actually gotten better from 2 years of not doing it. Because all that like negative emotion of just getting frustrated with my swing and my lack of progress, all that was gone. And I just, like, it felt more natural. I felt more like, oh, re-energized, like, oh, I can do this. And it actually happened again pretty recently, because actually just a few weeks ago, I had a buddy of mine who we found out, neither of us knew that the other played golf. And so we're like, oh yeah, we have to go golfing again someday. And so we did, and the first time playing in about 3 years, I scored better than I had ever played. Like, I played just amazing compared to anything I'd ever done. Granted, it still wasn't like Tiger Woods level, but you know, it was decent. But again, because I didn't have that like negative schema where I was like, I'm not good at this. I had less of that like over-analysis of like my coach's words ringing in my head as to like, okay, your swing has to be this, this, this. It just felt more natural. I just use the term grip it and rip it. Just, you know, get up there, hit it, don't think about it too much. And that goes a lot for lucid dreaming as well. That's why a lot of people who start out and they're struggling with it, I always tell them, you know, like, you know what, if you're really tired of it, just quit. I know it sounds really like mean, but it's true. Like, if you just take a break from it, often like it's easier to come back to after you've had just a moment to breathe. But also you'll find that during that break, you might just have a spontaneous lucid dream because you still have all that knowledge you have of lucid dreaming that you've read from articles for months and months and tried to put into practice. You still have all that skill, but you have less of the frustration and negative emotions around it. So you might just find, oh, I got lucid randomly. That's cool. Um, but that's, I guess, the main thing I want to say about that. I guess the best way to kind of describe the typical, well, I don't want to say my experience is typical, but kind of just give you an idea of what to expect, is to tell kind of my story of how I got semi-decent at lucid dreaming. So I started back, I kind of shared this last podcast, but I started when I was my freshman year of college, lucid dreaming, and it took me 6 months till I had my first one. Typically, it won't be that long for your first one, but it was, and like especially for me, I was following random tutorials online. I was trying a ton of different stuff, none of which worked, and I was just like, I can't do this. And I think it was kind of the same way where I was just like, I'm fed up with this. Like, I'm not going to put as much effort into it. And sure enough, I just had a random lucid dream that lasted about 5 minutes. I still remember it. I put my hand through I was in my bedroom. I put my hand through my bedroom door, and I jumped around. I tried flying, I couldn't, but I jumped around, kind of like zero gravity. It was really cool. But yeah, like that just goes to show your first one's the hardest. I say that to everyone. Your first lucid dream is the hardest because you don't really know what to expect. Good analogy is like if you're trying to describe the taste of something to someone who had never tasted it. So like, say you had never tasted an apple before, and I try to describe to you what an apple tastes like, and be like, okay, it's kind of sweet, it's a little bit crunchy, and not too citrusy. You're like, okay, sweet, crunchy, not citrusy. That sounds like a chocolate chip cookie. And I mean, yes, but an apple and a chocolate chip cookie aren't anything alike. So really, I guess the point of that stupid analogy is that you don't really know what to expect until you've experienced it. You can read all you can on the forum, you can hear personal experiences, but you don't really know until you have it. You don't really know what works for you until you have your first. And so, I guess the advice I give to all beginners is, just keep reading at it, keep being motivated, and there's not really an easy shortcut. You just got to keep doing it until it pervades your every thought. Well, not your every thought. Until you get into the habit of it. And then eventually, once you have your first, you know that you've gotten over the huge hump. You've climbed the mountain, you've had the first one, and now you have something to base it off of. So like I said, it took 6 months for my first one, and it took probably 2 weeks to a month for my second, because I knew that feeling. I was like, this is real, I can do this. I had the motivation boost of knowing I had accomplished it, plus the fact that I could base what I felt off of that one, the first lucid. And so it was much faster for the second. And I had a couple more after that, but I did notice after a while I started having the really short, like as soon as I realized I was dreaming, I'll wake up. I had those for a few months. And again, that's typical. I think the main reason that happens is because you put so much effort into just getting lucid over those first couple months that you kind of don't put as much emphasis on what to do once you're lucid, like stabilizing and extending the dream. So once you're starting to have those, consider that a milestone. Like, not like you're failing and that your lucid dreams only last a few seconds. I'd say consider that a milestone, and that you're now getting good enough at having lucid dreams that you can move on to the next step, which is working on stabilizing and extending your dream time. And again, there's plenty of resources for that on the DreamViews forum as well. But just keep motivated, keep focusing on that instead of, because you've got getting lucid on your belt. You'll get a little bit better as time goes on with that, but your main focus is you want to focus on extending your dream time. So that went on for a couple months, but then as I started to shift my perspective, I started having more longer lucids. And at that point, I think I have one maybe like once a week, once every couple of days. And at that point, it's like, okay, well now now I have the skill. Now I want to get stuff done. And so, yeah, it's cool to have those like goals when you first start. That's a good way to be motivated. But you don't want to forget those once you get having them regularly. Like once you get to the point where you can accomplish them regularly, you want to still have that motivation to be able to do them. I know it's kind of long-winded, but basically, you just want to, at that point, that's when you want to start seeking out your goals. Again, like it's kind of, I guess there's 3 phases to it, really. The first one is you have motivation for learning about lucid dreaming until you have your first one, and then your first couple. And then your second phase is getting the motivation to make them longer. And then the third phase is to have the motivation to accomplish what you want. And I guess that's really, those are the 3 main phases. I guess it's just, again, motivation is key. That's the number one killer for anything, is just kind of like, you know what, I'm not seeing any progress. I'm just tired of this. I give up. Or like, I won't put as much effort into it. And that's a big killer of, you know, a lot of it. And not to say that you can't pick it back up, like I said with the golf thing. You can pick it back up, but you don't want to like lose that time that you spent towards especially the dream goals. And that's one of the current things I'm having problems with is, you know, just keeping that motivation, finding new dream goals. But, you know, don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Like, you know, I've listed a couple of different things you can try: transformation, flying, persistent realms, and dream guides. So, I mean, there's a couple things to try if you haven't tried already. Perfect chance right now. But yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to say about that as well. So I guess that covers it. We're almost at about 40 minutes-ish on this time. So I guess it's not really a mini-sode, but whatever. So anyway, thanks you guys for watching or listening. Sorry you had to listen to me ramble. I really hope in the future, pretty soon, we should be able to get, you know, more podcasts out. Like I said, I'm planning on moving out fairly soon because in my current situation, I have to be very selective as to when I do podcasts and lucid dreaming things, just because of the environment I'm in. But once I'm on my own, I should be have a lot more availability to do that kind of stuff. Hopefully, we'll have in the future a second podcaster, so you don't have to just listen to me. But yeah, I just wanted to get this out to you guys for the time being. I'm kind of rambling at this point, as if I haven't for the last 40 minutes, but you get the point. So this is SpellB2 signing off. Thanks for listening. Listening.